My man Jason Anik and his brother John, massive Red Sox fans. I think some of the fandom has been sucked out of me a little bit because, quite honestly, well, I know too much about that organization and some of the people, and maybe it has tainted me a little bit. But boy, oh boy, Alex Bregman, Jay, finally lands with the Boston Red Sox. You, Cody, your brother, you guys have all been waiting for this, right? I see your social media interaction. Are you like a puppy with two Peters over Bregman finally landing with the Red Sox?
I was, until Rafael Devers killed my entire buzz. It's like I'm trying to find the strength to talk to you about Bregman and to rewind a couple days back to how I felt. So maybe I'll go there first before I talk about Devers. From Alex Bregman's singular standpoint, right? I'm so happy this happened because that's the ballpark in which he belongs to be a home player and hit in, right? And Jared Carabas, who is a friend of his, right? Who I consider an acquaintance, you can be sure was talking to him and pushing for this. So I've been very, very hopeful, but every day that fell off the calendar, it felt less likely to happen. In terms of the structure of the deal, 3 years, 140 million. It's really, 120. It's really 3 1-year contract, whatever it may be. Yep. I don't much care, right? Let's just get to year one. Let's figure it out. It's hard not to have Rafael Devers coming through my brain at this point. But what Bregman does to that lefty heavy lineup, putting him right in the middle there. And, a lot of what I was going to say today, though, Rafael Devers got in a little bit of the way of it, right? Because I was going to talk to you about chemistry and playing for one another. And you know how much I think of Alex Cora. So before we get into the Rafael Devers component, I know my brother has lost a little bit of his fandom of the Red Sox in the same way you have, some of it being in this business. But for you, did Bregman signing give you any juice?
If it were a permanent deal, yes. But the fact that they did the whole, this is essentially 3 1-year deals where Bregman can opt out at any point in time. Now, the money, they did overpay. And that's one thing that does need to be recognized here. But it made me feel just okay. Like, Jay, I should have felt really good about that signing and thinking, okay, now you start to look at the lineup and you lengthen it a little bit. If people stay healthy, you might truly have something here. And the John Henry thing, smoking the cigar. We won the deal. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I was excited at first. Then I heard about the deal. And then this Devers thing where, for folks, if you've been either living under a rock or don't know what we're talking about with Rafael Devers, basically he was asked if he would move off third base, and his answer was a flat no. Now, this is what we get, though, Jay, unfortunately, with this organization, because the only reason Rafi Devers has a long-term contract right now, in my mind, is because they screwed the pooch on bets. Everybody went nuts. There was almost a mutiny from the fan base, and the Red Sox were just like, we got to go sign somebody. And they gave Devers the extremely long-term deal, even before he had proven some things. And one of them was being a team leader, and this is not a display of leadership.
Oh, gosh, there's so many places to go. As I said earlier, I was hoping to come on here and go absolutely nuts about Alex Bregman. I was hoping to see a picture of our number 3 and number 4 hitters together, right? Bregman and Devers, like Manny and Ortiz, right? Like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, right? And I come back to this chemistry thing, right? And playing for one another, right? And I bring up the Boston Celtics because Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, there were a lot of people that tried to divide those two together, and it was never a story. Joe Mazzulla held them together. Ime Udoka held them together. Brad Stevens, those guys were always held together. So for me, I don't love the energy around here. I do blame the Red Sox a little bit for a little bit of a lack of communication for putting Devers in this spot. But I want to talk about Rafael Devers for a sec, because I'm not one of those people that disliked the contract. And my younger brother has always said to me, it's not my money. And how bad is that Devers contract going to look as the years go? I'm not sure it's going to look all that bad, right? As a defender, right? I could give you the stats, and I will, from last year. But there were moments in his early career where I really liked the defensive player that I saw. And from his standpoint, I do wonder what it's like to be 28 years old or whatever it is, and maybe feeling like you like to play the field. He's not that clubhouse leader, right? David Ortiz can fill his time as the designated hitter in the dugout, going down and watching film, but maybe Rafael Devers likes being out on the field. So I also think there's a language barrier there, but ultimately it crushed my buzz.
Well, I also think on the language barrier thing, it's not like there haven't been people in the Red Sox organization for 10 years mentioning to him, hey, maybe you should learn to communicate to the media in English and get to the point to where you can then be viewed as a leader. Because if there was one thing about Big Papi that added to the appeal of David Ortiz, it was kind of his broken English and the way he spoke English. It made you gravitate towards him more because you just knew that was the real person. I don't need someone to go up and be a poet laureate as if they're leaping Lanny Poffo back in the WWF in the 80s. But you got to be able to communicate. And if you're going to be the team leader, you got to be able to communicate with everybody. So there are guys that are going to come in who are not going to be able to communicate with you because they don't speak Spanish.
It's fascinating, right? And Manny Ramirez or Vladimir Guerrero Jr., right? But neither of those can really vocalize in English the way David Ortiz did. My brother, Jason Anik, who works for the UFC, has talked about a lot of these fighters and how they've learned English and how it has endeared them to the fan bases once they learned it. But some of the Devers-Ortiz similarities at the plate, right? And you may laugh at this, right? But I believe Rafael Devers has an incredible eye at the plate. He reminded me, I used to say David Ortiz reminded me a little bit of Barry Bonds at certain times where if he didn't swing at a pitch, it was because it wasn't a strike. I love Devers at the plate. I love his eye. I think there is some sort of intangible leadership there, but I think most of that's really going to be by example. And I'm curious, because you now have Theo Epstein involved here and Alex Cora. Do you think those guys, and maybe it's more on Cora, are going to be able to sort of find a way for this thing to dissolve and we can focus on the excitement that is really a very exciting, you got Crochet and Bueller at the top of the rotation. I mean, can Alex Cora fix this?
Yeah, I think Alex Cora can manage it. I don't think he can fix it, but I think Alex Cora can manage it because he has the ability to get through to these guys. And now really our only hope is to have Cora be the one to get to Devers. And I know that Cody put a bunch of stuff up in our chat. And one of the things he put in there was Cora saying, hey, we got to maintain flexibility all year long. And some people are going to have to, like Bregman's already quoted to being like, yo, put me wherever. I just kind of want to be in the lineup. 40 million will do that to a guy, but nevertheless, and by the way, it should. Devers should be willing to at least move around a little bit. And the fact that he isn't, I think starts to sour some people on him. Now, they got 6 weeks of spring training at least. They got time to be able to turn this around and figure it out. But I think the Devers comments didn't catch people around the Red Sox by surprise, but I think it caught some fans by surprise because you kind of assume, especially in that sport, that there is some position flexibility and you need to be amenable.
It's a great point there. And I do think the fan bases can tend to overreact. But if you look at the NBA and you look at Anthony Edwards, right, coming out and saying, I don't want to be the face of the league, right? That's for Wembanyama or whatever that is. If anyone who didn't hear those comments, Anthony Edwards was interviewed and said, he wants to be the it guy on the floor, but not necessarily trying to be the face of the NBA. And I do believe Bregman's annual value for this one season is higher than Devers. Is that accurate?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So and so Devers, is there an ego here that we're seeing that we don't need to see? Because the humility, David Ortiz was the alpha, but there was always humility there. Right. So if you need to ship Rafi up to Toronto, bring back Vladdy Guerrero Jr. and sign him to a long-term deal, perhaps. But for me, Carabas messaging me, well, we're back, we'll be fine. I don't know, Matt. This concerns me far more than it may others because I'm a big chemistry situation clubhouse guy.
Well, I think Carabas had him winning the division last year, and we all knew they'd stink. So, and I know Carabas as well, and he's just a honk. So you can't really go by him all of the time. You can't let him sway you that much. But go ahead.
Well, I just think he's tapped in a way that if he's genuinely not concerned about it, it may lessen my concern because he is connected, regardless of what you think of. And I'm a huge fan. He's super well connected to the manager, the players. So I just have a lot of confidence in Cora to fix this.
Yeah, and that's the guy right now. Alex Cora is really the guy on the spot. And when you look at his ability to connect with his teams, he's really never missed. And that's something that I think we could truly take solace in. And I'm busting Carabas's balls because he's a friend of ours. And, there are a lot of people that are genuinely optimistic about the Red Sox. Jay, what I did last night was turn to the betting market. And I admit I did not expect to see the win total that I did with the Red Sox. But just how important was the Bregman signing? Sox are now plus 2,200 to win the World Series. They're plus 1,000 to win the American League. But Jay, their win total is 86.5. If you're 81-81, you're 500 over the course of a long season. You mean to tell me they can't be, they can't go 6 up and turn that the other way and get to at least 87 or 88 wins, which, by the way, doesn't guarantee them to get into the postseason, but that could be a juicy ticket if you jump on it right now.
That's the value on the board. You stole my thunder. 86.5 season wins. I do like the over. I mean, look at the arms at the top of the rotation we just mentioned that weren't walking through that door last year. In terms of them to win the AL East or win the American League or win the World Series, to me, those are a little more flyers at this stage. Even to see them in the division at plus 425 makes me happy as a fan, because prior to last season, it felt like they had no shot. But I would be lying to you if this Rafael Devers comments, and maybe I'm overreacting as a fan, but I feel like it put a blanket over the whole thing to me. It's almost like I can't get back to the excitement I felt a couple days ago, because I want Bregman to feel super welcomed by Devers. And if you can't speak the language, I want big hugs all the time and a chain in the dugout or whatever it may be. The chemistry is so huge for me. And if Devers ain't going to be on board for this, I don't care what those numbers say. Yeah, you maybe can win 87, 88 games, but you ain't going nowhere.
Well, and that's a very fair point, and I think a very fair criticism of Devers and a little bit of the worry. There are two things that give me some, I guess, comfort in this, right? Knowing that it could end up turning around. Number one, this happened a week into spring training. Like, we barely got this thing off the ground, so you're now going to have 6 weeks of everybody being down in Florida, where some private conversations and maybe getting in the ear. I feel Big Poppy sighting will be at camp soon to maybe have some conversations with some people, and Devers might be one of those guys. And the other thing is that there are veterans here who can't explain to Bregman, oh, that's just Raffy. And I know it sounds a little lazy, and that's very optimistic, but I think it's very real.
And I think that's a great point, and not different from the point you made earlier about the organization probably isn't taking this as seriously. And who knows, maybe the organization said, let's just let this thing play out. Rafi's shoulders were banged up last year. Who knows to what extent he can play? I just didn't like the animosity, even as English as his second language. I just didn't like the look on his face for the kid. And also too, Rafi, it's like, let's get in some shape. You want to get in a little bit of better shape. You may play better in the defense. I know that's a sensitive topic with baseball players, but don't come in with that fat face killing my Bregman buzz.
He's Luka. I hope he's Luka. Like, I hope he's that good in baseball that Luka is in basketball. But to your point, they're skinny fat. Is that fair? That's some people think that is a disrespectful term. One other quick betting note on baseball here before we move on, because I know we got a bunch to get to. Will a 2025 division champ win the World Series? The no is plus 210. So if you think someone outside the division winners, I know everybody's heavy on the Dodgers, right? And that they're going to win it. But say if you think, look at the American League East, for example. There could be 3 teams that would get in again. Does one of those wild card teams just get hot at the right time and end up winning it? So if you're maybe not into the chalk as much, like if this Red Sox move has got you horny and thinking, okay, maybe they can go win this thing, that's a sneaky way to get some value on someone that isn't going to be a division winner to win the whole thing.
Yeah, and give you some nice action when that postseason does begin. It's a long way from now. But overall, I am excited about the Red Sox. I'm excited what they did. And I do believe when Carlos Correa was a free agent a couple years back, or there was some talks, some trades and different things, Red Sox were interested. And a lot of these guys are UFC fans. So my brother got to know Carlos Correa, and John just kept saying to me, Carlos Correa is a championship player. That championship DNA, it can sound like a cliche, but that's what Bregman brings into this clubhouse. He is not, you think he wants to just go 1 year and go somewhere else? No, he wants to hoist a trophy. He wants to be in the postseason like he's been every season, I think, until last. So I think he brings a winning attitude, and I love the connection with Alex Cora. I think we're going to see a lot of great things out of this team. I think they'll get through this little muddy spot here.